I want to talk to you, though, about the storm. A lot of people say that the storm came along and the sand left. What do you say to them, and that it's a bad expenditure is what they're saying? So what do you say in response to that?
Howard, shore protection is a multifaceted issue, and there is no single thing we do that is the answer to anything. It's a combination of many things. Beach renourishment is one of many issues that we need to address. And the problem we have is having that understood as widely as we can, so that the leaders in our political spectrum understand that shore protection is necessary for all levels of government. It isn't just for the local person to try to swallow. It's a national issue. You have 37 states with water running by their shorelines, be it on a river or a bay or on the ocean. So it's not something restricted just to the beaches.
Pardon me. What happened to all of that sand, though, that goes offshore? Doesn't that amount to wasted money?
Not at all. The sand that drifts offshore will eventually and slowly rebuild itself back onto the beach. Maybe not exactly where we want it, but it does return for the most part. Some small elements of it may stay offshore, but a majority of it does, in fact, return to the beach. And one of the issues we try to do is try to work with Mother Nature and not against. And where the sand accumulates on our beach down drift, we go down with equipment and under the control of the Army Corps of Engineers and the State Department of Environmental Protection, pick that sand up and bring it back to where it left. And this is done locally by the local government as part of our support of trying to make the beach renourishment last as long as it can. It's just one of the many steps.
You've got dunes. You got high dunes. Do they last? And what do they do? What is their function?
Well, the dunes are two things, at least to Avalon they are. One thing is our dune system is so massive in certain areas. Their dunes are 52 feet high, and they actually have a maritime forest dune. And one of the nice things we're able to do is to provide a dune walk, that is the dune path going to the beach, where the experience of the beach includes the dunes. It isn't hiding the view. It's actually a part of the beach experience, and it has worked out extremely well. And the homeowners here, following Gloria, learned that the right way to do things is to build their houses with the living room on the top floor and the bedrooms on the lower floor, and allow the dunes to build and provide the protection. I can tell you that today, following that massive storm, there isn't a one of them that doesn't appreciate what those dunes mean.
Now, however, you're talking about all the protection that it provides for homes and that sort of thing, but with our budget that we have currently in this country, with all the expenses that we have and the deficit that's driving, and we're going to have to start looking at things we should be cutting. Isn't beach nourishment one of those things that we maybe ought to take a look at and stop spending as much money in that area, since a lot of it does wash away and it's mainly protecting what some people would call wealthy people's homes?
Well, I would offer that if it's all wealthy people's homes, that could be an issue. But I look at Surfside down in Freeport, Texas, a little community down there, and I would hardly call them rich. I would tell you that they would tell you exactly the opposite. Mm-hmm. They're an oceanfront community, and they survive on only the tourist trade that is provided to them during the seasonal months. So it's a multifaceted issue, and yes, I do believe that doing a cost-benefit analysis and reviewing what a community can do on a community-by-community basis is what's needed. Certainly, if there are areas of the beach line where there's no housing, no nothing, those areas are certainly open for protection by naturalists and conservation to try to protect them, not only for the people to use them who can get to them, but also for the wildlife that is supported by their being there.
Harry, you've taken steps in Avalon that go beyond beach nourishment to reduce risk and damage. What are they?
Well, we were fortunate enough to actually get an Army Corps project in here that put a new seawall along our very volatile inlet to our north end at Townsend's. And that seawall, in conjunction with the dune system, truly kept the mad ocean at bay for us in this last storm. And I look north of us and south of us, and I see communities really, truly devastated by this. And Avalon really came out with just incidental damage caused by rising water, which we live with every day.
Up in Atlantic City, all the pictures showed a lot of flooding. Have you had a chance at least to get word from other folks about what happened there? Did the beach project not work, or was the flooding caused by something else?
Well, as my understanding of it is that in Atlantic City, the north end, where they had an old decrepit boardwalk that was in the process of collapsing, is what you see in those dramatic pictures showing the collapse of the boardwalk. Their actual boardwalk, which runs along the ocean front, is actually in very good shape. That old seawall that they have at the north end and the old boardwalk are what you see in those pictures. It's not actually the beach. The Army Corps project itself is in really good shape as far as I can tell.
Yeah, that's a report that I had also, that the flooding came from whatever you call the backside there, not the ocean side of the beach. So I was always seeing, during the storm, I was seeing these overheads flooding, but they weren't coming in from the ocean side.
No, we have the same issue. We flood from the backside. We have, about 15 years ago, required an elevation of all bulkheads in the borough, and anytime anybody rebuilds a bulkhead or puts one in new, it has to be built to a much higher flood elevation than the old version, and that has gone a long way toward limiting that level of damage caused by back bay flooding. We've also installed what I call force stormwater pump stations in those stormwater pipes that do back up, and it puts a head pressure on that water trying to enter the town through the stormwater system, and it keeps it completely down. When it surcharges the wet wells, it just comes on and it puts a head of pressure on it and keeps the water out. Actually, it'll pump down the street, and any incidental water is pumped back out.
Let me ask you a question, because a lot of what you're talking about sounds very costly, not only for the federal government, but also for local communities. And when we start looking at things like Hurricane Katrina and the billions of dollars that cost in repairs, and Hurricane Isaac and Faye, and even most recently Sandy, wouldn't it make a lot more sense to move people away from the ocean rather than building all these protective layers and things to keep people safe that want to stay in those areas?
Well, there are a couple of thoughts in that matter. And the first one is, let's suppose we're going to take Avalon off of the beachfront and we're going to move it someplace. I don't know where you're going to move it, would be the first statement. And the second statement, who's going to pay for the removal? You have 5,600 homes here with a rateable base of $8.7 billion. How are you going to do this? Because all the infrastructure, all the stormwater stations, all of the sewer plants, everything has to go. So when you start removing a community that would cost more than $1 billion to pull out, what is the issue with a cost of a few $1 million over a period of many years to keep it in place?
And also, you're a barrier island to the mainland, if I remember correctly.
Yes, we sit out in the North Atlantic 3 miles. We are a community of 5,600 residences. It's a very family-oriented community. We don't have any amusements to speak of. We just have a very small shopping district and the beach. And we provide 5,600 homeowners with a level of protection where they enjoy a 20% reduction in their flood insurance rates because of the activity we've taken on to control the flooding in this community. We also have a Standard & Poor's AAA rating for a community sitting 3 miles out in the North Atlantic. There's something getting done right. There is a way to do it, but each community, each area of the coast has to be individually studied to determine what the right approach would be.
And how do you go about doing it? Because obviously you've done it, and other communities, let's say one by one, can do it, but and we don't want to have the federal government dictating these kinds of things because it's land use and the Constitution prohibits it, and it's not the right way to go about it. But, if we were just thinking in the big picture, what do you do to encourage local communities to do the kinds of things that you've done in the borough of Avalon?
Well, we started this issue after the '62 storm. It was a huge lesson learned when the community was literally washed away. When we started to rebuild, we also then at that time took the effort to buy out many of the lots in our dune area to try to keep that natural protection in place. And the ladies who started that operation were very successful in getting it off the ground. And I came in the mid-'80s and picked up what they had left off and continued that process with the education of the public and the homeowners at their annual meetings. And I go over and show them what has happened in the past and what the storm protection does. We've involved the elementary school in dune grass planting, where the kids actually come out and plant dune grass, using it from a greenhouse where they plant it in the fall and replant it in the spring. They become involved. They are now old enough that they are our bigger protector of the dune system than any police officer would be. They actually take it very personally when they find people walking in the dune system destroying the dune grass. So it becomes an awareness thing that you got to start first. You have to have the community behind you. It does no good to try to do something where you're going to have argument and disparity amongst the people. You have to work as a team. The community has to come together, agree that this is a good approach, and then move forward. Quite honestly, this is the best time to do it if you're going to do it, because right now they get the message. They can see it. It's evident. After about 10 years, those who are going to be here aren't going to know what happened. Now there's a learning process that has to go on. How are you going to educate them? How are you going to keep this in front of their eyes so they can continue to see what it means? That's the real issue first. Get the people on board. Do what you can yourself. Prove that you've done everything you can within your own abilities. Then turn around and ask for support from the state and federal governments. Work through the process, understanding it isn't going to get done in a hurry. It's going to take years. We spent, Howard, I guess, 25 years doing this?
Yeah.
It took 17 years to get that Army Corps project through, and I simply wouldn't take no for an answer. So it starts with the grassroots, the people in the community, the members of their council or administration, working with all the community to try to get them to support it and to help it grow.
Harry DeButts, Acting Emergency Management Director for the Borough of Avalon. Thank you very much, Harry. You've been very, very informative. Appreciate your being on the Inner Loop.
Glad to help, Howard.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good answers. You helped us get the to the points that we were trying to make to our listeners today, that we're not just throwing money away. It's something that's very much needed along our coast, especially during emergencies. So thank you.
That's right.
Oh.
Also, there might be some cutting that you can do at the end if you need
Yeah.
to.
Well, that last part I was talking was
Yeah.
cut
No,
that.
I
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I think there's more than enough to do a full thing, so there's not going to be very.
Yeah.
So just depending on how much you want to
Did
record.
Joe ever get back to you?
Yeah, that was Harry's phone, not ours. Or not yours.
Yeah, I have it on silent. That's
Yeah, I was like, damn. Okay, what we need to do.